I will find you. You will ask, what will you do when they find me? Don't be scared of yourself.
Hi, I'm Dawn.
And I'm Ashley.
We would like to welcome you to the Work It, You Are Worth It podcast.
We're two friends sit around and talk about healing, growth, and healthy relationships.
Hey, Ashley.
Hey, Dawn. How are you?
I am doing great. How about you?
I am doing amazing. I had a great weekend. I did a wedding yesterday, and I walked a couple of really cool dogs down the aisle for their owners.
Did they have the, bow tie and all that stuff on?
Oh, yeah. The little one had this really cute bandana, this all white lace bandana. And then the big one, so it was a big Doberman, and then it was a little terrier dog, 120-pound Doberman and like a 30-pound terrier. And the big Doberman had a really sweet, really nice black leather collar, and it had a big bow tie on it, and the rings were attached to the bow tie.
Oh, how cool.
Yeah, so he was like the ring bearer, and I got to walk him down the aisle.
Nice. That would have been a lot of fun. I always think that's cute when people do that with their dogs. I think it's cute and funny.
It was really adorable, and the dogs were really well behaved, and it was a first for me, right? I've never been in a wedding, and I love dog training. I've been doing it for a very long time. I've never done a wedding before, so it was an experience of a lifetime for sure.
Oh, yeah. And hey, it's something to put on the resume.
Right? Heck yeah.
Always. So we are going to do, so we did we've done this podcasts in the past with amends, but didn't, we just had a conversation about what is amends, what does it look like, but we didn't have any kind of really true examples of what that would look like. So you have volunteered to do something, to share an amends letter.
Yes.
Right?
Yeah. So I have had a couple of weeks of stuff going on with my mom, and we have a very strained relationship as it is, just in general. And one of the things I was able to do this weekend with some of the time that I had, actually it was the past couple of days, was to sit down and write a true amends letter. And I have mailed that to her. I'm not asking her permission to read this. I'm not getting her opinion on reading this. The reason for that, I think, is very important to mention here is an amends is about me. My amends that I am making is about me acknowledging myself, taking accountability for myself, and changing behaviors that I want to change. Yes, the amends is to my mom, but it really has very little to do with her, except that I am giving it to her, right? How it makes her feel, how she responds, all of that stuff, that is hers. That is not any of my business.
Would you need to mail it? Would you have to give it to her, right now?
No, that's a personal decision.
Right. I think there's no right or wrong, right, with it when you do that.
Right. Again, an amends is about the person making the amends. When I make an amends, I am not trying to make someone else feel better about what I did. An amends is different than I'm sorry. I'm sorry tells someone that I feel bad, and I hope somehow by my feeling bad you won't be so upset. But an amends is about things that I see me doing and I am not okay with.
Yeah. So I've read this, right? You shared it with me to read. And one of the things, and we'll get around to reading it, but one of the things I loved in here was you did not say I'm sorry. Nowhere in this whole thing is I'm sorry. Because it's not, like you said, it's not about her. It's about you. It's not.
I don't feel sorry.
Right.
When you think think about the feeling of when you tell someone that you're sorry. When I tell someone I'm sorry, I have this guilt. I have this shame. I have this negative feeling about something that I said or did, or that they perceived I said or did, whatever. I have some sort of a negative feeling. When I started to write this amends, there may have been a negative feeling when I started it, but as it is completed, there is absolutely no negative feeling. It is a release. It is a lifting. It is a, it's just an acknowledgement and an awareness to pay attention to my own behaviors.
Right. And I think one of the things, saying whether you decided to send it now or you didn't decide to send it, because sometimes I feel like an amends letter can be, I'm sending it because I want the other person to hear what I have to say. And to me, that's manipulation.
Yeah, I don't have any opinion on whether or not she reads the letter, whether or not
right.
she doesn't have to hear me. She doesn't have to
right.
agree with me. It's not about her.
And it's really, let's say she didn't get the letter. Let's say for some reason the United States Post Office lost the letter. It's okay, because it's not about her getting the letter.
Honestly, the only way I'll even know if she gets it and reads it is if she decides to say something about it. I'm not going to go and be like, oh, I threw a letter in your mailbox. You better listen to it, or you better read it.
Right.
Or, that's on her. And
I think when you said that you were going to mail it, I said to you, I love the idea of mailing it, because it's literally turning it over to your higher power. What happens to it once you put it in the mailbox? You have no control over it. It's out of your hands. It's out of your control. What happens with it at this point forward is none of your business.
Right. And the reason...
It could get lost. It could get to her. It could write. It doesn't matter.
Absolutely. Completely out of my control and none of my business. And the reason I even chose to write instead of, say, direct communication, face-to-face, is because, well, part of it is in the letter, but part of it also is because it's not about her response. It's not about how she feels. It literally has nothing to do with the other person.
And so somebody would say, well, why send it at all then? If it's not about the person and you don't care if the person reads it, why even send it? What would you say?
I'm sending it for me. I'm sending it because I want to give her the opportunity to hear me. Whether or not her higher power and my higher power give her that opportunity, and whether or not she chooses to take that opportunity, is out of my control. But I want to give her the opportunity in a safe way for me.
What if she doesn't take it the way you hope she takes it?
That's not my business.
What if she calls you and tells you that it's a bunch of bullshit and how horrible it is for you to say that, and it's not true?
That's her opinion, right?
Right? It's not your business.
Right. She's entitled to her feelings. I'm not going to say it wouldn't hurt. I'm not going to say that I wouldn't struggle to not react. But logically and in a healthy place, I know very clearly her opinion is none of my business. Whether it is an opinion of something I'm saying to her, or it is an opinion of something I'm saying about her. And it's not just her, it's anyone. Their thoughts, feelings, and opinions are none of my business.
Well, that sounds so heartless.
It's not heartless. It's actually the only way I can stop myself from letting go of them, right? So it's the only way I can stand up for myself. It's the only way I can stop myself from letting go of myself. If their thoughts, feelings, and opinions are my business, then that means I have some sort of responsibility to them. I have to try to heal them or fix them or change them. And that is out of my control. So it can't be my business. I can't let it.
But that's really hard to do. So, like, and I know we'll get to the letter, but, like, that's, to just not worry about what somebody's feelings are, that's hard. How do you go about working through that to be able to accept that?
I think that when people say to not worry about things, oh, I wish I didn't have to worry about it, or I hate that I'm worrying about it, what we really mean is we wish the thought would never ever creep up into our minds. Unfortunately, we are not in control of our thoughts. Our brains run crazy sometimes. I know my brain runs crazy sometimes. I am not in control of my thoughts. So if that thought pops up, then as soon as I find myself holding on to it, I just remind myself with another thought that it's not my business. And it's okay for them to feel how they feel, just like it's okay for me to feel how I feel.
And I'm sure there are people out there listening to this that are, like, struggling with understanding that. Like, well, that doesn't make sense. How do I not, like, this is my mom. This is my husband. This is my child. How do I not care how my kid feels or my parent or my spouse feels when I say something?
It's not that I don't care. First and foremost, I care. Who I am as a person is that every single interaction I have, my utmost priority, at least what I strive to do, is kind, caring, considerate, compassionate. Be love, right? Act with love. Live in love at all times. Not perfect, but that is my first priority. So every time I interact with my daughter or my mother or my husband or anybody else, I care about how what I am saying is going to affect them. I am considerate of who they are and where they are. However, I also need to do what is best for me. There is a way to communicate with my family in a way that is safe for them and safe for me and respectful of them, and vice versa. It is possible. We just have to be willing to work to find it.
So how do you control, and I know you've been going through this with your mom, and your mom has said some things. How does anyone go about not taking those feelings on and carrying that weight?
You know, it sounds so simple to say, but how do you go about not taking someone's snotty tissue out of their hand? Right? How do you go about not eating what someone else vomits? You just don't do it. You don't allow it in. When something nasty is said to me, and I end up having it in my head, right? Because I can't stop it from coming into my head. I cannot stop those words from replaying in my mind. What I can do is examine those words.
I love that you said that, because that's what I was thinking. It's like, because even though to turn it off, like stop and not let it happen, that's not gonna happen for me. I am going to, when somebody says something to me, I'm going to feel it. Like, it'll be this little, like, twinge in my body, this little, ooh, that stung.
Well, and it might be a big twinge, right? It might feel like a stab in the heart. It might feel like a stab in the back. It might feel like somebody just crushed my entire world. But my feelings and my reactions are two different things.
Right, because I can say, and my mom will say stuff that'll twinge me. She's probably the biggest person that does that to me. She is still tends to be one of my biggest triggers. But what I can do is I can feel like when it happens, I can be like, okay, I gotta let you go. Oh, hey, I'm at my location, right? We've said this before on the podcast. Like, I call my mom in a window of time that is safe for me, respectful for her, and I can end the conversation. And then it's not just push it to the side and let it go, because it is coming, but like understanding why I was triggered. What did she, like looking at what she said, how it made me feel, why it made me feel the way it made me feel, and work through it until I understand what core thing it hit.
Right. And then the other thing, too, along with what you're saying is when that person is no longer there saying those things, for me, those words tend to echo in my brain. And those echoes, if I ignore them or try to shut them up, they get louder and louder and louder.
They'll literally become this just gnawing thing in my brain, and it's just, and then I carry it through my entire body.
Yes. What I have found for me is that I examine those thoughts and then I debate them. Right? So,
not rationalize them.
Right. So one of the things that people are good at telling me, I've been heard multiple times in my life, is I am too sensitive. I'm too sensitive. And so a lot of times that thought will echo in my head. You're just sad because you're overly sensitive. So instead of just shutting that down or shoving that down or pushing it aside or completely ignoring it, stonewalling it, I will actually sit down with that thought and I will say, am I too sensitive? This happened and I feel this way and this is my reaction. Was that too sensitive? And I'll actually examine that thought. Once upon a time, somebody told me that I couldn't run, and that I horrible language, right? Bad language used. I can't run. I run awful. And I spent years living with that. It would echo in my head anytime I ran somewhere. You can't run. You run like that. You run like that every single time. And I shoved it down for years. And then finally I sat down and I said, well, what does that even mean? Right? And I examined that statement and examined what it meant and then looked at if I even believed what it meant. I mean, I went to the dictionary. I looked up the words that were used to see what it meant and what that thing would run like, or person, or whatever, however, right? What that would look like. And then I was like, that doesn't even make sense. So I spent 20 years living with this thing about that I run weird or whatever, and never once even examined the thought. I spent 2 minutes examining it and actually looking at it, and it was gone. That doesn't mean it disappears. That means it pops up and I go, no, we looked at that already. That's not real. And then it goes away again.
But you're not out there trying to run and prove to everybody that you can run.
Right.
Right. It's not, because that would make it about everybody else. Instead of, I've analyzed this. I've looked at it. I know it's not true. It doesn't make sense. And that person, I'm not going to say they're wrong, right? Everybody is entitled to their own opinions.
Right, I just don't agree with
it.
It's none of my business.
Right, they just, in my eyes, they weren't accurate, so okay.
Right, that's another time that I go, yep, that opinion's none of my business. It's okay. And that statement allows me to let go of that opinion every single time it pops into my head. Now, like you said, I'm not out there trying to run track. I'm not on a track team. I don't enjoy running. That's not what this is about. It was about letting go of the thought and learning how to move through that thought.
So, do you have any other, can you think of anything else that is a story that you were told and how you worked through it?
Not off the top of my head.
Yeah, I'm trying to think of something too to use, and I can't think of anything. I'm sure after we get off this, I'll be like, oh, I could have said that. Oh, I could have used that again.
Yeah, I'm sure there's 1,000 of them, but in the moment, I can't think of any.
Right? But I think one of the things that I have struggled with is, nobody can see us on here. I am a plus size woman. There's a lot of societal people say there's certain things that I can't do. Because, right? Oh, if you're overweight, you can't do this. Oh, if you're overweight, you're not healthy. Right? I've battled through that in my head for years. I used to be 120 pounds in high school at 5'10". I was skin and bones and looked gross. But as I would get older, and I carried that brainwashing feeling of you're not good enough, you can't, you won't be able to. And I had to personally had to work through that to know what was not true. And we shared last podcast about some of our spiritual awakenings, and mine were very active spiritual awakenings, where I was out doing things. And that was part of that process for me with the spiritual awakenings, was to learn that my body doesn't dictate what I can do and what I can't do. Because I can do anything I put my mind to and I want to do. It's just whether I choose to listen to what other people are telling me or do what I know I can do.
That's so crazy to me, Dawn, because it's the opposite, right? And I think we said that last week, but as you continue to describe it, my spiritual awakenings, it was the exact same thing, but it was the complete opposite. Mine were when I was calm and I was quiet and I was alone and I was sitting and sedentary, right? That's where almost all of my spiritual awakens happen. Sitting on a boat, driving in the car, right? Alone and quiet. And that is because I always filled so much of my space with doing things and working and other people, and I get that, but it's insane to me. It's not insane. It's funny. It's ironic. That's it. It's ironic how very, very similar our stories are, and yet totally different at the same time.
I know. 'Cause it is. I'm very much but my things happen by myself, right? Even though they were outdoors and I was being active and all of this, they still were. I was on the bridge by myself.
Right.
There's other people around me, but I was so into myself and with me.
It was very personal.
That I didn't really. Yes, being in the kayak, right? People, and I'm trying to pull them and get them, and it wasn't about them. It was about it was personal. It was about me and what I could learn I could do.
That's funny. I just said that about the amends too.
This is crazy.
Right? Because that's about our inventory too. It's about me and what I'm doing.
Exactly.
I'm seeing a commonality, and I know this wasn't where you were going, so I'm sorry to take us off into left field here, but...
No, you're fine.
I am seeing a commonality of things in recovery where it is about me, it is personal, and it is about what I am willing and able to do. I can either choose to be kind and love and compassionate, or I can choose to be self-centered and selfish and inconsiderate.
I think when I am kind, considerate with myself first and foremost, it just naturally makes me kind and considerate to others.
Absolutely. I can't say that loud enough. I have noticed over the last few weeks that when I'm noticing someone else is he's being inconsiderate, or she's being selfish, or they're being judgmental, that if I stop and I look and I actually pay attention, sure, they may be being those things, but I'm noticing it because I'm also being those things.
Yeah. Like, it's not a coincidence that when this stuff happens, it's right. There's a lesson in it, and I feel this in every aspect of my life. Anytime anything happens, and I'm gonna. So we started recording earlier, and your internet went out, and we jumped straight into the letter. That right? I mean, 3 minutes in, you were starting to read, and this is not a coincidence that your internet
Not at
went
all.
out. It's not a coincidence because, like, we were trying to make it happen, and that just doesn't work. So it's everything in my life when I force it and try to make it happen, or I'm seeing it in others. Like the judgment and all those feelings, and I have to look right. There's a reason all this stuff happens. Everything is very, very intentional. What I'm learning and what I have learned is I have to listen to everything. Everything that happens is an opportunity for me to learn a lesson or get something out of it.
Yeah, for sure.
And that's what this letter is, right? This wasn't, again, going back to, this wasn't about your mom. This was what you needed to hear, what you needed to learn about yourself, what you needed to purge and say.
Yeah, I mean, I don't remember how long ago it was, but a couple of weeks ago on the podcast, maybe even last week, I had said I was taking a break. And during that break, daily, multiple times a day, I was thinking about my mother and our relationship and the things that happened. I couldn't actually take a break because I was very wrapped up in it mentally. I spent the better part of a week trying to force myself not to think about it. And then finally, around Thursday night's meeting, I realized what I was doing. And come Friday, I just sat down and I didn't know what I was going to write. Honestly, when I sat down, I was angry. And what I'm about to read is the third version of this letter. I took a lot out. I added a lot. I took a lot of justification out. I took a lot of blame shifting out. But all of that was processing my emotions that I had tried to shut down and shove away all week.
I think it's really what you said about I was going to take a break, because naturally we think I'm going to take a break. That means I'm just not going to have any contact. But it's like I'm done. I'm just not going to deal with this. I'm not going to talk to them. I'm not going to think about them. But that's not what it means, right? You took a physical, I mean, I know your mom doesn't live close, but calling, interacting with her on the phone, texting, all of that. You took a break from that because what you needed to do was you needed to have silence so you could process it without having her in your ear and hearing that, like picking up distortion and picking up her feelings, because that's what you're doing when the person is coming at you. You're taking on their feelings because you're angry, you're upset, you're right. You need to, and so you had to process through that by taking a break. That doesn't mean everything's going to shut off or you're not going to think about it. Because I think, like I said earlier, where you can be angry, you can be disappointed, you can feel all those things. There's nothing wrong with them. I think we need to feel them. Because when we feel them, that's how we work through them. If I push them to the side, if you would have just not thought about your mom at all, you wouldn't have worked through anything.
Right, I wouldn't have processed anything at all. I would have never sat down and wrote this letter. And that's what I used to do, right? I used to just cut contact, not think about it, just shove it down as far as I could and bury it.
Yep.
That's not what I did this time, and that's what's different.
That doesn't mean anything in your relationship is going to change. Nothing in the interactions of you and your mom's relationships might change, right? I mean, you'll change. Maybe you'll change.
Right. So that was actually what I was going to respond to you with is, well, something's going to change because I am going to change.
But does that mean you're going to be perfect? And when your mom says something, you might not get triggered?
not at all.
But that's okay, right? It's okay that you...
The key is not to never lose control of my emotions. The key is that when I catch myself out of control, I grab back as quickly as I can. And when I say control, I don't mean control in the typical sense. I mean my emotions do not have to match my actions. I do not have to act out how I feel. And when I catch myself acting out how I feel, anger, sadness, frustration, when I catch myself acting angry and acting sad, well, that sad doesn't really work, but when I catch myself acting out those negative emotions in a negative way, I catch myself doing it and I stop myself when I catch myself. That's the goal. The goal is not to never, ever have it happen again.
I think that's why when we say, like, people will think, they'll come into the program and they'll think, oh, I just can't wait till I'm better. I can't wait till, like, this, I get rid of this. I can't wait till I'm fixed. That is, like, one, we're not broken, right? Two, I'm not going for perfection. I literally just want to be able to do things differently every time an interaction happens. I just want to be a little bit better than I was before. That doesn't mean I'm going to be better every time. That's what I'm striving for. Just striving to be better every time.
Absolutely. I mean, I have a goal, right? I've talked about that Dalai Lama type shit, right? I have a goal. My end goal, and it's not an end goal, it's just one I would love to see. Not that I think it is the top of the ceiling, but that if I reach it, I will feel very accomplished, right? My goal is that I can have someone verbally abusing me and it not get inside of me. It genuinely not hurt me. Their voice not echo, their words not echo in my brain, the thoughts not come after. Like I want to get to a point where someone can say whatever the hell they need to say in whatever way they need to say it, and it does not impact me.
So I think your letter was a great way to work at striving for that. Right? Now, could you have, like, if I'm feeling a certain way, if somebody says something and right, just the twinge, like, it doesn't get inside me, it doesn't, like, end my day, it doesn't bother me, I'm not, like, ruminating over it or anything like that. But I feel like if it happens, you go and you put your pen to paper. Get it out, journal it, right? There's where I feel that that's the process that has to happen, and that comes from, I think, reflecting on your day, like every day, like looking at what happened in my day, and okay, this person said this, right? It's like, because you think you have to, like, I don't know, it's like, I would love Dalai Lama shit too. I think I'm trying to be as realistic with myself that there might be a twinge. And I'm okay with a twinge. But then I might have to work through that twinge later. Right.
I'm okay with completely losing control. Doesn't mean I want to lose control, but if I do, it's okay.
What if you don't reach Dalai Lama shit ever in your life?
Compared to where I was 5 years ago, I'm already, like...
I'm already doing Dalai Lama shit.
Right, like, I mean, I say that and I think about my reactions with my mom and I think about my reactions with Nick or the kids sometimes, and I'm not where I want to be, right? I have not reached my goal. Of course. I always want to grow. I always want to learn. I want all of these new habits to eventually become old habits because I have learned better, bigger, newer habits.
Right.
And
you're opening up space to even learn newer habits and better habits.
Right.
Yeah.
And it's okay that sometimes My survival instincts come in and I act before I think. It's okay. If I can be kind, loving, accepting, compassionate with myself, then I can be that with others.
Are you ready to read us your letter?
Oh, I'm ready. I'm ready.
All right. So no further ado, Ashley.
All right. Dear Mom, I chose to write you instead of calling because it feels safer. I don't feel understood when I talk to you about my feelings. At least this way, I can speak my truth. When I said I have been your perpetrator since before I was born, what I meant was, for as long as I can remember, I have felt at fault when talking about our relationship and our interactions. From my first memories, I was afraid to do something wrong. I remember being terrified of your anger. I remember how my behavior seemed to determine your emotions. I remember feeling like if I could just be good enough and keep my sister happy enough, then you wouldn't get angry and I wouldn't get hurt. To this day, I struggle with other people's anger being a trigger for me. I remember trying to gauge your emotions as young as preschool, riding home attempting to guess how you were feeling based off the type of music that you were listening to or the tone in your voice. Usually, it was your reactions to my stories that told me how the evening would be. For so long, I remember wanting so badly to be good enough for you to want me, to be good enough for you to like me. I spent years just trying to be perfect. Ignore my brother being mean, hide from my stepdad's anger, clean the house, take care of my sister, get perfect grades, be kind, put on this smile so no one asked if I was sad. Be as little and as quiet as I could and get noticed as little as possible because for me to be noticed meant pain, either physical or emotional. I felt unlovable. I felt isolated. I was so vulnerable and so terrified. I remember wanting from about 3 until about 10 just for my mom to just like me. Finally, around 10, 6th grade, something changed in me. I gave up. I gave up on ever being liked by you. I gave up on ever feeling security with you. I gave up on the idea that anyone, including God, was going to rescue this 10-year-old little girl from the physical and emotional pain that I was in. I came to the conclusion that my mom didn't love me. She hurt me all the time, and we don't hurt people that we love. My dad didn't love me. He left, and he refused to rescue me too. Even God has given up on me. He left me to be hurt over and over. I truly gave up on the idea that anyone would ever save me, and with that, the idea that anyone would ever love me. If God, my mom, and my dad couldn't even love me, God, I must have been awful. So I decided to be awful. In that moment. That's when I wrote that Mother's Day card. Do you remember that? I think I was 10 or 11. I just poured all of my anger, rejection, and fear into that card. God, I spent days making sure that I said just the right thing to hurt you as deeply as I did. I wanted you to feel all the things I felt. I was terrified, hurt, and angry about how I had to live. And when I saw how my anger with that card hurt you, I realized how powerful my anger was. I had found a way to stay safe. I found a way to feel powerful. That terrified little girl finally felt heard and understood. For many, many years, I used that anger. I used it to keep you away. I used it to keep me safe. Finally, when I was about 16, I reached out to you again. I needed you so I could finish school. I spent weeks trying to figure out how to talk to you about it and deciding if reconnecting with you was even worth it. I asked you for help for the first time in years. And when you couldn't do it, I felt rejected. I felt unimportant. I felt unloved yet again. And I gave up on us yet again, and I moved across the country. When I came home, I was pregnant with Destiny. I realized that I was regularly meeting your anger with my own matching anger. I was attempting to overpower your anger with mine. I realized I was becoming someone I didn't like. I was defensive and angry. I was hurt and scared. And so yet again, I created space. I moved halfway across the country this time. Over the years, I have learned that if I match your anger with my own anger, you will relent. When you relent, I feel safe again. I don't want to do that anymore. I am working very hard on becoming someone who can meet anger with love. I am working on becoming someone who can meet pain with forgiveness and understanding. I will no longer entertain your anger. I will not be a part of any conversation where I don't feel safe. I am not interested in debating or discussing my relationship with anyone else with you. That includes my siblings and my fathers. I will do my best to communicate in a considerate, kind, and compassionate way with you at all times, while still remaining authentic and standing up for myself. My love is not conditional. My presence is. I will always love you. Talk soon.
So, wow, Ashley. I read this earlier. You sent it to me to read, and I was blown away by it. Then, but it's so different hearing you read it in your own, like with you, like, because I feel like I felt all the emotions, and like reading it, I know you, so I've talked, and so I can hear you reading it, but to truly hear you reading it, wow. And there's so many things I love about this. Like, one, again, I love the fact that you did not say I'm sorry, because you had nothing to say I'm sorry for. You did not own anything when it came to your mom. Nothing. It was all I statements, and I felt I. We were talking the other day in the meeting, like, this is a selfish program. This whole program is about me. It's about me figuring out me. And that's what you did in this. But my favorite part is the last paragraph. That I will no longer entertain your anger. I will not be part of any of conversations where I don't feel safe. I am not interested in debating or discussing my relationships with others with you, including my siblings and my fathers. I will do my best to communicate in kind, considerate, and compassionate way with you at all times, while I still remain authentic to myself, standing up for myself. My love is not conditional, only my presence. I love that, because that is such a clear and concise boundary.
It is, and it's my boundary to maintain for me.
Yes, but there's no question in there. What do you mean? What about this situation? No, it's clear and concise. There is no questioning what you mean and what you said.
And I think it's really important to note, too, that as a boundary, as this last statement, right? So what happens if she comes at me with anger, or if she wants to talk to me about one of my fathers? What I will do is my best to communicate in a kind, considerate, and compassionate way that I am not willing to talk about that.
Right, you stated what your boundary is. you can easily say, as I've stated, Mom, I'm not going to talk to you about this. If you want, and I know you have said this to your mom before. If you want to continue talking about this, then I'm going to hang up. If you want to have another conversation, I will continue talking.
Yep.
Because you've spelled it out.
Yeah, and I will say it over and over again as many times as I need to, and I will hang up the phone as many times as I need to.
What if she never gets it?
Then I'll keep hanging up forever. I'm not going to cut my mother out of my life, right? I love my mother. Me loving my mother has nothing to do with my mother. It doesn't have anything to do with how she treats me. It doesn't have anything to do with what she says to me. I choose to love my mother. And in choosing to love my mother, I am also choosing to love her in her worst and in her best. That doesn't mean I need to expose myself to her in her worst. I can distance myself from that. But I will still love her. I will still be here for her. And when she is ready to be safe again, I will still be available.
Well, I'm gonna kind of play this devil's kind of advocate. And I don't know, and that's not even what I'm trying to say. But well, that's great, Ashley. You and your mom don't even live close together. The only thing you do is talk on the phone or text. Like, I live with my mom, or I live 10 minutes from my mom, so I can't do that.
You can't walk away. Like literally just turn and move your feet in the opposite direction of where she's standing?
Right? Go to a bathroom. Nobody argues when you say I have to go to the bathroom.
Well, and I mean, look, I do this with dog training, and I have come to the conclusion that people respond very similarly to animals, to dogs. And if my dog is doing something that is unsafe for me, I am not going to become unsafe for my dog. I'm going to leave the room. Wait until my dog stops and then come back immediately. If my dog is giving a behavior that I am not okay with, I am going to intentionally ignore my dog until it gives a behavior I am okay with, and then I'm going to reward it. If I am doing that with people also, and the reward is my attention, my affection, not that I am withholding, but that you are unsafe, therefore I cannot be around. And then when you are safe again, I come around.
So you're teaching people how you want to be treated through nonverbal communication.
I don't even like to consider it as teaching people how to treat me, because it's not about them. I'm not trying to teach them anything. I'm simply deciding what I will or will not engage in. And when a person behaves in some manner that I feel unsafe, I have a right to choose whether or not I engage with that behavior. The only way I know how not to engage is to leave. Sure, if I could sit there and say, I really'd rather not do this, and they were like, okay, no problem, I wouldn't leave. But we're not talking about something as easy as that, right? So if somebody's in my face yelling and screaming and berating me, I'm not going to stand there and listen to it. I have in the past, but at this point I am not going to scream back and be louder and angrier so that they will listen. I am going to disengage. I'm not going to join the crazy train. That is not my monkey. It is not my circus. They can have their anger. They can have their frustration. They can have their opinion. It's not mine.
The whole third promise, I think it's third, I found a new freedom. That's for me what I got one of the times I got turning around and walking away. Be able to just turn around and walk out of the room, or turn around and not say anything and just leave, or just get up and do something else. And they're like catches them up, like, whoa, like, where are you going? I don't have to engage with you when you're talking this way. Right? I'm not being mean. I just don't have to talk to you. Or like if they ask, that's all I have to say. I don't have to sit here and talk with you about, like, I don't have to. Typically I just get up. It's like getting up and leaving was finding a new freedom because, well, this was a lot easier than arguing for the next 2 days.
For so long, I did not even realize that it was possible to simply disengage. I don't know. I thought that if I disengaged, it meant I didn't love someone or something.
Yeah.
And that's just not true. I can love Mom. I'm going to keep using her as an example, right? I can love my mom more than I can describe in words, and still refuse to engage in behaviors and conversations and situations that make me feel unsafe.
One of the things you hear people say is, well, you have to fight for the ones you love. Shouldn't you be fighting for the relationship with your mom? Shouldn't you be fighting to...
Can I ask, when has fighting ever been positive? In what situation can you possibly... I've been wondering this, right? Because everybody, you're right, I hear it all the time. Don't you want to fight for your relationship? Mm-hmm. Tell me one situation that fighting is positive.
Well, when I come across it, I'll let you know. But until then, I have nothing for you. Because it's never served me well.
Fighting involves anger. Fighting involves stubborn determination. Fighting involves
fear,
self-will, and fear. Yeah, I have never found fighting for something to be a good thing, though I did it for many, many years. Instead, what I strive to do, and again, I'm not perfect, but what I try to do is love for it. I don't want to fight for my relationship. I want to love unconditionally. And I do.
Shouldn't you fight for yourself?
I don't have to fight for myself. I already have myself. All I have to do is stand up for myself and choose what I will and will not expose myself to. Fighting for myself, to me, unless somebody is attacking me, I'm not interested in fighting. Like, sure, if there is a major physical threat and my safety, my life is at risk, my physical well-being is at risk, I will fight for myself. But any other situation, I don't need to fight for myself. I already have myself. I already know who I am. I don't... If I walk away, I'm bringing myself with me.
In your amends letter to your mom, like, you talked about fighting with her. Like, you were fighting for yourself with her.
I was.
But right? So, like, you're just, you're telling me that I don't need to fight for myself, but that's what you were saying you were doing.
I was for a long time. I was matching her anger with my anger, and I was fighting for our relationship to be what I wanted it to be. I did for... Gosh, in the letter, even in life, 10 years old is when I remember starting my fight. I do remember choosing anger. I remember the Mother's Day card I wrote her and the intentional thought that I was going to make her feel how she had made me feel all these years. It was very intentional. I spent weeks preparing this letter. I read it multiple times to myself, nobody else. And I even planned how I gave it to her. I made it the hurt that she encountered the day, and I know she remembers it. I can't imagine she doesn't. The hurt that she encountered that day, I did everything in my power to create it because I was fighting. I was. And then I continued to for the next 30 years in one way, shape, or form. I continued to fight. And I'm done fighting. Fighting doesn't work. Fighting involves anger, and I don't want to be angry. Anger is what has created all of this. First hers and then mine. And anger is what's kept it going for so many years. Fighting for it is what's kept it going for so many years. Maybe it's just time to accept this relationship for what it is and where it is and be okay with that.
So there's something else I got out of this, and I noticed, and it's really interesting the way it came up on my computer. So I know it's mentioned before, like plug Michelle Chalfant, The Adult Chair, amazing podcast.
Yes, I love it.
Second best podcast around. But you know what I saw in this? The first two paragraphs, you were full on in your adult chair, or in your child chair.
Very intentionally.
Second half, totally in your adult chair.
That was my intention with this. So, again, when I sat down to write this letter, I had no idea what I was going to write. I was angry, I was hurting, and when I decided to write it, when I started writing it, after that first sentence, I decided to write because it feels safer. I thought about what I wanted from this letter, and what I wanted to create was openness. And the only way that I know how to create openness and connection is through vulnerability. As an adult, I'm no longer vulnerable to my mother. I care, but right, to be vulnerable is to be like open to hurt. Somebody can tear me up and tear me down and hurt me, and my mother's opinion of me at this point, as an adult, I'm not vulnerable to that. So I wanted very much to create vulnerability in this letter to her, and the only way I knew how to do that at this point was to step back to that child chair, to start at the beginning and take myself to that terrified little girl who saw her anger and was so afraid of it, and then to that preteen who figured out how to match it, and then that young adult who figured out how powerful it is. I didn't know any other way to do it. It seemed to work out perfect, though.
Yeah, it really did. And I love, right, this isn't a journal. This isn't a journal entry. This wasn't what comes out, it doesn't matter, and then I send it off. This was an intentional amends letter.
This copy was the third one. The first one was 4 pages front and back. The second one was 3 pages front and back. This one is 1.5 pages.
So you're telling me you were able to cut your words almost in a third, well, actually a third, and be your true and authentic intentional self? How? Shouldn't it take more words?
Well, the first one, no, it doesn't take more words. Direct communication is respected, right? It's needed. It's so valuable to say what I mean and mean what I say without going in circles. And the very first one that was so many pages, first there was a lot of circles. And then there was a lot of focus on certain situations. And then there was a lot of focus on taking my mother's inventory. And then as I reread it and decided whether or not I wanted this to be an amends letter or I wanted this to be some processing of emotion, I wrote it a second time and I took out the situations and I made it to be, right, just about our relationship. Instead of this situation happened and I reacted this way because of this, I tried to make it more about our relationship as a whole. And then I noticed still, when I went back and reread that, I noticed still that I was taking her inventory. Yes, I was taking accountability for my feelings, and I was following my feelings up with the reasons I felt my feelings, which is her inventory. So this letter, this third draft, this final draft, is nothing except my inventory. What I am accountable for, in my opinion, what I have done that I wish I would no longer do. And I understand the value in having done it.
What I'm hearing you say in the first couple of drafts was, so the first one where you were using a lot of scenarios and how you felt, was there was manipulation behind it, because I'm going to tell you the scenario and this is how I felt, kind of manipulating her to understand your position on it, your thought on it, your feelings on it.
Yes, very much. It was an attempt to explain and justify in an attempt to gain understanding. Yes.
And this is all about you. I this, I that, I this, and you didn't need all the words. You just didn't.
This is an amends letter.
Yeah.
This is a letter of acknowledgement and accountability and awareness of my own behaviors and what I want to do for myself to change those behaviors.
I look at you, the first couple of drafts you wrote, more as journal type situations, right? Because I feel like
Yes.
there is that, let me go into like that level of stuff, because maybe I have to process through it. Maybe I have to look at it. Then I need to come into a healthier place and then get into another healthier place, right? So I need to process through it to get to this end result. That's what I think you were doing. But you know that. You've done this long enough now to know this. You've worked through situations like this that you knew you couldn't send the first draft because it wouldn't have been authentic and intentional. But I think that's, nobody's saying not to do that. What we're saying is do that to be able to get to the end result. You have to work through it. And sometimes, like, it's okay that you sat in your child chair for the first half of this letter. Because there are times I need to sit in my child chair.
If I don't sit in my child chair, then my inner child feels abandoned.
Exactly.
That is how I support myself, is by sitting with that child in that chair and acknowledging the feelings that I felt and the things that I went through and giving myself understanding and giving myself compassion without blame and taking accountability without anger. Those first two drafts were definitely journal entries, right? I had to process through my anger before I could even get to a point of being willing to look at my own actions. I had to write down what I felt towards her for her behaviors in order to be able to even look at myself.
You know, the one thing we've talked about for the last year and a half, has been this with your mom. Like, this is not something that's just arose this time around. You've worked through your mom multiple times. I know I had to work through my mom multiple times, and I'm still working on my mom multiple times a day, right?
Yeah, I don't plan to be done anytime soon.
Right.
I'm certain this will not be the last of an amends letter that I write with my mom, or the last self-inventory I take with a situation with my mom. The wounds go so deep and have been there for so long that to open them up and clean them to get them to heal is not a one and done situation. It's going to take time. It's going to take intentional work, right? Think about an actual wound. Imagine if that actual wound cut all the way to the bone and was 30 years old. It's gonna take time. It's gonna take a lot of intentional work to heal that wound. And I have a wound, and she has a wound, and our relationship has a wound. So it's not one wound that needs to heal in order for us to have an amazing relationship. It is 3 wounds that need to heal. And we can't even work on the relationship wound until the other wounds, right? My wound, until I have healed my wound and she has healed her wound. Then we can begin to work on our wound.
You know, I found it really interesting when I came to CODA. I thought I was coming to mend a relationship, a romantic relationship. I was coming because of that. And I still call him the guy that brought me to Coda, right? Without that rock bottom spiral, I wouldn't be here. So grateful all day, every day for that. I thought that's what I had to work through. I thought that was my, once I got through that, I would be fine. Never in a million years did I walk into my first meeting thinking that my biggest hurdle and the thing that I still struggle with the absolute most is my mom. My mom and I used to, my mom completely abandoned me. Like, not physically, but like emotionally and all of that. And I thought we were the best of friends, and we were. But it was from such an unhealthy, codependent place that the relationship was just completely screwed up. And I thought I was fixing my romantic relationship. But what I had to do was I was fixing myself, and my mom is the hardest relationship that I have to heal. Because the wounds are so deep, the hurt is so deep, that it still will come up. It comes up. And it's okay.
Yeah, I mean, definitely my relationship with my mom is the hardest one. I think that for most people, the relationship with our parents is the hardest one to heal, because that is the one that we are taught from such an early age to rely on the most.
They were the first people to let us down, right? This is the person that we're supposed to count on for everything. And being a mom, I let my kids down. I didn't mean to let them down. I wasn't intentionally letting them down, thinking, oh, I'm going to let my kid down today. I just was doing the best I could with what I was given. If I wasn't given some of that stuff, how was I supposed to know I should do some of that stuff? But I get the opportunity now to do the things that I didn't know then.
Yeah.
And that's the same thing with my mom, right? She didn't teach me a lot of stuff. I don't know a lot of stuff to be able to deal with her from a healthy place, but I'm learning those things. She continues to teach me things on how I need to interact with her from a healthier place for myself.
It's interesting to see the work that goes into a relationship and the level of intentional self-awareness that I have to have in order to maintain healthy relationships.
I saw my mother yesterday. I saw my mother today. We're working on something together. And it's something I needed to actually go to her house to kind of see the template. I love my mom. I have not spent much time with her in the last couple of days, right? Maybe total of 2 hours. That was enough. And it was part yesterday and part today. Both times I was like, okay, I'm ready to go. Right? That doesn't mean I don't love her. That doesn't mean I'm not. If something happened to her and she was in the hospital or she needed something, that doesn't mean I wouldn't be there. That doesn't mean that I don't like her, because I love her. Oh, God, I love her so much. And we've come so far. It just means when I start feeling that yucky feeling in my body, I know, for me, it's time to leave. Because it's best for her, and it's best for me to walk away.
I think that that's the perfect place to leave this. When I get that yucky feeling in my body, it's best for me to disengage. I just feel like that's a heck of a message to end this with. When you get that yucky feeling in your body, disengage. If we did that, how many of these conflicts that we go through in our lives would we no longer have to go through?
Ashley, thank you for another amazing podcast. Thank you for sharing your amends letter. I love that you were willing to do that because I think so many people out there, I know I get it as a sponsor. What is it like? They'll ask what an amends letter looks like. What do you mean by an amends letter? People default to I'm sorry, and that's not what it is. This is what an amends letter is. It's owning, taking my responsibility for myself, being accountable, being my authentic self. So thank you again. Thank you for sharing this, for being vulnerable, and great job.
Thank you. And thank you for listening and for being here for me and having it. And I love that we do this. I do. It's hard to be this vulnerable, but it creates such an awareness that I got me.
You know, there's something about talking about this when we talk about it and just kind of putting it out there and, you know, doing this, we decided to be extra vulnerable in doing this, and I'm so glad we did, because like we said last week, just the opportunities it's offered from being in a healthier place for me is crazy. And so I love that we do this as well, and I would love to have amends letter people send in amends letters. Ask us questions. I mean, again, we keep saying this. Send your stuff in. Ask questions, right? If you're questioning how to go about an amends letter, ask us those questions. We will talk about that even more and go deeper into it. We just want to share our recovery, our journey, what we have learned, what we have worked extremely hard for with our listeners.
Absolutely. It has been such a pleasure. Thank you, Dawn.
Thank you, Ashley.
Thank you, listeners.
All right, Ashley. Well, have a great week.
You too. Bye, everybody.
Bye.
We would like to thank you for joining us on this journey of self-discovery. Visit the Work It website at workityouareworthit.com to submit your questions and topics for future episodes. And remember, work it because you are worth it.